Hello, everybody. Joseph P. Farrell. I'm a little late today getting my news and views from the Nefarium up. I forgot about it yesterday, and today I'm behind because I've been reading for researching the second book that I'm co-authoring with my good friend Scott DeHart. But anyway, first an announcement, actually two announcements, then a couple of very interesting news items. The first announcement is that Saucers, Swastikas, and PSYOPs is now at the publisher. I just got my notification that it was delivered today. So they should be within, I'd say, 2 to 3 months. So sometime December to January, that book should be out. Like I said before, this is an unusual book because what I'm really examining is the possibility of a breakaway civilization and what its activities may be. All right. And it's more of an essay than a detailed academic study. But anyway, that book is at the publisher. The second announcement is next week on Friday, we have the test for our technology for the video conference I want to have on the website. This will be open to everybody. So kind of look out for that. We're going to start at 6 o'clock like we normally do and probably go a couple of hours, but we want to make sure that the technology works before we proceed. Anyway, two very interesting news items. And these were actually sent to me by two different people off the website, members of the website. And I forget your names, and I do apologize for that. But the first one, I don't know if you've been watching the politics lately. I I do, but I don't because it takes me about 5 minutes before before I get disgusted with all of them. But as you know, I tend of all the field of politicians running, I tend to incline the most to the views of Congressman Ron Paul. And someone sent me this. I'll try and put the link up sometime in the next week of a Gallup poll that was run just this week. I think it was this week. Uh, yeah, this week. And this was reported on Alex Jones's site, Prison Planet. If the election were held today, according to the Gallup poll, Barack Obama would trail Mitt Romney by 2 percentage points, 46 to 48. He would be running a dead heat with Governor Rick Perry of Texas. And if he were running against Ron Paul would trail President Obama by only 2 percentage points, 47 to 45. Now, what's interesting to me is that you can go online, find this. I'll try and post the link. But you'll notice that none of the major media have even mentioned this on their news shows all week. I've been kind of watching them, trying to pay attention. I may have missed it. Maybe they didn't mention it. But if they did, it hasn't been in the evening when I've usually been watching these things. And to me, that's very significant. It means, number one, Ron Paul's ideas are getting mainstream traction regardless of the attempt to ignore him. And the biggest idea that Ron Paul has been pushing for several years is that the idea of a central bank, a private bank, issuing the nation's currency is wrong. It's not constitutional. I disagree with Congressman Paul over the idea that currency must be bullion backed. All right, I disagree with that idea. But I do agree with the idea that if you have a monopoly, a private banking monopoly, issuing the nation's currency, it really cannot issue currency. It can only loan monetized debt notes into circulation. In other words, it never creates the interest on the principal. So there's never enough money. This is the most important lesson for all of you to learn. As long as you allow a private central bank to issue the nation's currency as a debt note, that debt will never go away. Banks do not make profit by producing things, they make profit by being parasites by creating debt. That's what banks do. That's what the Federal Reserve is doing. So all of this hysteria in the media over the debt crisis, you are not going to fix it until you wake up and realize that only a state, only a nation state, a government can issue debt-free money. Now, the argument the bankers have always used is that if you give that kind of power to a government, the only thing that they're going to do is inflate the currency. But look at the history of the Federal Reserve, my friends. Since 1913, what have these so-called responsible bankers been doing? They've been inflating the currency, and in the last 10 years, we've seen their irresponsibility and criminality come home to roost with a vengeance, with millions of people losing their houses on the street and losing their jobs. We need to change the direction that the country's in. We need a lesser regulatory climate so that it's profitable for businesses to do business in this country and manufacture things here. And the second thing we need is to put these central bankers out of business, out of the business of having a monopoly on this nation's currency. And I think the moves are going to happen, because I think you're going to find increasingly the idea of regional currencies, perhaps issued by states themselves, perhaps issued by several states within a region or a governor's conference, what have you. I think the idea is coming. It's just a hunch. But anyway, I want to move on to my second news item, because this one, this one's a whopper. This was, and let me read the link for it. It's www.thehindu.com/sci, SCI dash tech /science/article 2432999.ece. And I'll show the article to you. There you have it, the Hindu. And you see an astronaut on the moon. Okay, and I'll try and post the link to this sometime this week too. And it says the moon to have no-fly zones by month's end. And what's this all about? Well, what it's all about, the article proceeds to tell you, is that NASA is establishing recommendations, what it's calling recommendations or guidelines for other countries possibly going to the moon, to regard our Apollo landing sites as historical sites, all right? And they're establishing all of these guidelines where you aren't supposed to be able to fly close to these sites within a certain distance, and so on and so forth. And what I find really interesting about it is, number one, that they would make such a quote-unquote recommendation. But the really interesting thing is that they refer to not the land on the moon that the sites occupy, but the actual artifacts that we left there as U.S. property. And they're really really nervous, in my opinion, about having other countries go to the moon and visit these sites. And I really do have the intuition, the gut feeling, that they are nervous about other countries finding out something. Not only necessarily what was on the moon to begin with, but the possibility, as I've always suggested, that maybe there was an alternative technology in play that got us there and off the moon. I think NASA's reaction is, to me, really kind of priceless, that they're this nervous. And I suspect that if we allow the hypothesis of a secret space program, I suspect the other thing that may be taking place, this is all a big, huge what if, but if we allow that hypothesis, then maybe someone has gone to those sites already and scrubbed them and cleaned them, and that they may be worried about that as well, that other countries will go and say, oh, look, someone else has been here and cleaned the site of incriminating things. All right, so I found this really, really interesting, that they would say this. And they even said, and the article is quoting NASA here, quote, Apollo 11 and 17 sites will remain off limits with ground travel buffers of 75 meters and 225 meters from each respective lunar lander, states the July 20 guidelines of NASA. All right. So there you have it. NASA doesn't want anybody to find out what's going on up there. All right. That does it for this week, Friday, September 16th, 2011. This is News and Views from the Nefarium. I'm Joseph Farrell, and we'll see you on the flip side, everybody. God bless.